It's time for Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson. I'm your host, Tony Graham. Good afternoon, Matthew.
Good afternoon again, Tony. Great to be chatting again after the wonderful session we had this morning.
It was, wasn't it? Now, we've got Apple and Samsung launching their mobile phones and other devices, I suppose, very, very soon. So run us through that, Matthew.
Certainly, Samsung Unpacked is going to be running this week. So Thursday morning, early Thursday morning, I'll be up watching that live stream. And funnily enough, with Samsung Unpacked, they've leaked probably most of the items that we'll see. So I can probably give you a bit of an idea what we're expecting to see there already. There's a new Note. So the Note 10 is the current Note. In all the other flagship phones from Samsung, the S20 is the current number they're up to. So the Note 10 is obviously lagging behind, but the Note 20 should be announced on Thursday morning. You've also got some new Galaxy earbuds. Now, earbuds are quite popular from Samsung. I'm not sure what else they will have in these new Galaxy earbuds, but there'll be some launch there. There'll be a new tablet. The S7 tablet will be launched on Thursday morning as well. And you'll also see, more than likely anyway, a new Flip. A Galaxy Fold 2. Obviously, there's a little bit of controversy over the original Fold phones that came out. They broke, unfortunately, but the new Fold seems to be going much better. And you'll see a new Galaxy Watch, a Galaxy Watch 3. On the back of that, Apple is actually going to delay their launch of their latest range of smartphones. Traditionally, each September, they announce their phones and you've got them available for purchase, although they're usually in a bit short supply in the first few weeks. But normally, you can get hold of the latest smartphones from Apple in September. But because of COVID-19, they've pushed that back. At this stage, they've said a few weeks, but it wouldn't surprise me, Tony, if we don't actually get our hands on the latest from Apple until maybe November rather than a few weeks after the normal September launch, because there's some significant issues that they've had to encounter with the whole COVID-19 crisis across the world. But look, on the good side, we've got Samsung really trying to make sure they're the number one smartphone seller in the world at the moment, but they don't own the flagship space. Apple seems to own that space. So they're trying to introduce new products to beat Apple. Apple's always trying to stay ahead of the game from Samsung. For you and I as consumers, what it means is this great competition between these two powerhouses gives us better products at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's even surprising they're going head to toe, really, in this COVID crisis. They don't seem to be stopping, and that's good, I guess.
No, look, smartphone sales were down in Australia, for example, and across the world over the last quarter. No surprise there. But surprisingly, Apple actually had some increased profits over the last quarter. So they still managed to increase their profitability despite the slowdown in smartphone sales across the world. So it is surprising. People still want their communications while they've been shut away in their houses.
Yeah. Matthew, Australia is about to lead the world in regulating the news. And this is actually big news because, as we both know, Facebook and Google have taken the news that people publish for free and distributed it. Well, they say that it's a little bit different to that, but effectively that's what's happened. And this is a big news for all the journalists out there, not just in Australia, but potentially across the world.
Yeah.
It might even affect us, here at Binjang as to how we do business.
Well, it could affect a lot of different organisations across Australia and across the world. And this is pretty brave of the ACCC and the Australian government to take on the likes of Google and Facebook. They are larger than many nations around the world, those organisations. So at the moment, sure, they have lots of news content on their particular platforms, but they don't pay for any of it. And the Australian government is saying, and other governments around the world are saying the same thing, but the Australian government is the first to start to actually take some action around it. They're saying that if you're going to have news content on there, then you should somewhere along the line actually pay for that content. These organisations generate significant revenue from people looking at what's on their platform. So to actually pay for some of it seems like it's maybe fair and reasonable. Google and Facebook might argue something a little bit different to that, but that's what the Australian government's saying. So they're introducing a code, and that code they're basically leaving up to, at the moment, Google and Facebook to work out with some of the news organisations in Australia to see what might be a fair and reasonable cost to pay for that news. If it gets to the point where they can't come up with self-regulation, if you like, then the Australian government will step in and put some harder codes around that. But it's a good first step, and it's taken a fair bit of time to get here. We've had about an 18-month investigation into the whole concept of digital platforms delivering news. Then there's been another year that's gone by where the ACCC's had some discussions and tried to encourage those tech giants to have some discussions with Australian media organisations. And now it's at the point where, okay, we've gone so far, we're introducing a code, let's see what we can do about getting some payment for that.
It's not before time, I have to say. It's a really good move, and I think just goes to show, in this particular case, the Australian government is really on top of things.
Yeah, look, I think it is a good move. I'll be interested to see how much pushback there is from the likes of Facebook and Google, and whether or not they're happy to, or they'll never be happy to pay extra money, but prepared to pay extra money without having a large legal fight, or whether they will just take it and dig their heels in, because it may not be about the money they pay in Australia. Once this goes through here, it may be about what it costs them around the world, and it might be a lot more than they'll have to pay here.
Well, Australia has been successful with the tax laws in relation to these overseas businesses. I don't know what the ramifications were there for other countries in the world, but it seems like we're having some success with this.
Yeah, I think you're right, and maybe the tax laws are so different around the world that the tech giants were prepared to go down that path without digging their heels in too hard. This might be a different matter. So, look, time will tell. We'll keep your listeners informed, Tony.
Yeah. Now, a big topic at the moment is TikTok. Now, it started off with India. They've banned it, and now the United States has banned that popular Chinese streaming app, haven't they?
Well, yes and no. I'm not actually sure if they have finally banned it at the moment. President Trump has announced that they've banned it, but President Trump says lots of things that might not necessarily be true. He said that he will sign an executive order to ban TikTok, but I don't know that he actually has done it yet, has actually banned it yet. He's been talking about Microsoft possibly buying TikTok, and Microsoft have been open to the idea of buying TikTok, but it's quite interesting. I find that a country and a private organisation having discussions about buying an organisation, but that organisation probably has got some say in whether they want to be bought or not. So there'll be some discussions around that, whether or not you can actually still use it in the US at the moment. As far as I know, you can still use it, even though the president has said that it's going to be banned. But at the moment, it's still running and still working. The big issue, of course, is around the ownership. Now, it's a private company that owns it, but it's in China. And so some people are concerned that the Chinese government may be able to access the information that's on TikTok, the information that people have put on there. When you consider that 2 billion downloads of TikTok have been made in the last year, there's a fair few people out there using TikTok. So if the government wanted to access their information, there would be a significant amount of information there for any government to look at it and try and pull some information out of that. Again, the company that owns TikTok, called ByteDance, have said there's no Chinese interference here, there's no government interference. We're just a private company going along doing our thing. But when you've got a Chinese government behind them, then sometimes they won't have a lot of choice in what happens.
Anyway, you've been listening to Tech Talk with Mathew Dickerson on 91.5. I'm your host, Tony Graham. Stay tuned next week. We have the morning session and the afternoon session, 10:40am, 3:40pm. And just wait for the next edition. It'll be a cracker. And it's back to the great music now. And the community information on Binjang.
I'll bring the dogs on next week again, Tony. They'll add to the conversation.